Hi, this is Liam Hanlon. I'm on Twitter. I've started making evolution videos for YouTube. I put stuff up on my Twitter about evolution from time to time, and then people come in and they have debates with me and things, and I've debated through with them over like a long. Sometimes we have debates that go on for a long time, and I'm a wee bit tired of having the debates and telling. I mean, there's times where 4 and 5, 6 different people come in and they just keep coming in and they keep coming at you. So to cut out all that stuff in the future, I'm just going to make these YouTube videos and give you an example of what kind of things the evolutionists say. So I'm making this video and it's called Evolutionists Say the Darndest Things. So I'm going to be taking you through some of these things shortly. It's a wee bit unfair for me because I'm having to not only fight against these people, but I'm also having to debate against the history of what we know as evolution. Now, lots of people don't really take much interest in evolution, so you might accept it as a theory, but you've never actually looked into it, and that was the case for me anyway, personally. I just accepted it as a theory because it seemed the most sensible thing, but then I researched things on the internet and find out about things to gain more knowledge, and when I went and I researched about evolution, I was a bit surprised it didn't have the credence that I thought it had. So let me take you. As I say, I'm trying to not only debate against these people, I'm also debating against the kind of the history that we have of science, evolution. So I'm going to just take you through the first kind of 5 minutes here of some of the best examples that I have, that there is big gaps, big holes in the actual evolution theory, so that you come up to speed with what I'm thinking. You can choose to accept these things or not, it's up to you, and then I'm going to take you through some of the things that these people have been saying to me. Oh, right. Okay, so let me go to this. Mostly when I was on Twitter, my journey started from this guy, Take That Darwin. I mean, I'm interested in evolution, but I've came to the belief that evolution didn't happen, so I'm interested in that. But I know that when I put things up, people are probably going to find it strange because most people don't really bother so much about evolution or evolution theory. As I say, they just accept it as a theory without even really questioning it. But I use my Twitter to put stuff up about evolution. I put lots of different things up about science, but let me just take you through an example of pro-evolutionists, what their current status of beliefs is. They kind of form groups on Twitter together as evolutionists, and most of it comes from this guy called Take That Darwin. So I'll just show you his page. This is this guy's page here. Now, people like me, or maybe people who haven't done as much research as me, but they just don't believe in the theory of evolution, they'll put up things that they don't believe about the theory of evolution, and he'll retweet them, and basically his whole entire existence is just kind of laughing at people who don't believe in evolution. So the evolutionist crowd on Twitter are taking a aggressive stance against people who don't believe in evolution. So in some ways I'm just kind of sticking up for them, I'm sticking up for what I believe in, and I'm sick of having all these arguments with people when I put things up on Twitter. So I'm just making this as an all-encompassing argument basis, various arguments that I want to put across. So I would attack this guy, Take That Darwin, on the basis that he doesn't put anything up that is remotely related to science. I mean, I would have a bit of respect for him if he wasn't just laughing at evolutionists or people who are probably less smart than he is. I don't think there's much honour in doing that, just kind of laughing at people. Fair enough, that's his choice, he can do that if he wants, but personally I don't think there's much honour in that. I would have more respect for him if he actually put things up which did relate to science and did say, look, this is what's currently happening in the evolution theory, this is where we're at, this is new evidence that we found. He doesn't actually put up anything about the progress of the actual theory of evolution and what new ground it's breaking. All he does is just laugh at creationists who put up various things. Maybe people that aren't well researched. Some of them are well researched and some of them aren't well researched. He kind of laughs at them all, but that's all his existence really is. So let me take you on to parts of the evolution theory that I know of that fall down quite spectacularly, and I'll quickly take you and show you them for the first 5 minutes, and then after that I'll take you through some of the debates that I've had. And as I say, this is called Evolutionists Say the Darndest Things, so we're going to be having a bit of a laugh at evolutionists. If they're wanting to laugh at creationists, then I'm going to do the opposite and represent the creationist people and have a bit of a laugh at them. So a scientific theory, let's just take you to the absolute bog standard of what science is trying to do. So a scientific theory is a well substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world that is acquired through scientific method and repeatedly tested and confirmed through observation and experimentation. So that is what we would accept as a theory, something that is well substantiated. It's a well substantiated explanation using the scientific method, and it's repeatedly tested and confirmed through observation and experimentation. Now let me take you to knowledge. What is knowledge? Okay, science is the what humans do to have knowledge. It's our study and testing so that we can then have knowledge. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is a familiarity, awareness or understanding of someone or something, such as facts, information, descriptions or skills, which is acquired through experience or education by perceiving, discovering or learning. So that's what knowledge is. We use science to acquire knowledge. Right, so now, something that evolution is actually basically what it is. It's an atheist's world view of how life came into being, how the world came into being. Now, when I've had debates with evolutionists on my Twitter, there's maybe been certain times where I have equated the Big Bang and abiogenesis to evolution. Now, evolutionists don't accept that. When you say that, evolutionists just say, like, I'm not interested in the Big Bang, I'm not interested in abiogenesis, all I'm interested in is evolution. Now, I can show you information that will disprove all three of those things. I know that we're mostly bothering about evolution in this video, but I just want people to know that if you take the atheist worldview as evolution, then you also do have to accept abiogenesis, and you also have to accept the Big Bang, because if there was no Big Bang, then there would have been no Earth for life to evolve on. So if the evolutionists are saying, look, this is the current accepted scientific method, remember, observation, testing and experimentation, so that we have knowledge, right, then we also have to accept that the Big Bang did happen. So if there's big massive holes in the Big Bang theory, then we can also say that is a thread. Their storyline is the Big Bang, abiogenesis and evolution. So if we can find holes in any of these things, the three things are so closely interlinked that it is, you are kind of tearing down all three. By tearing down one aspect of it, you are actually tearing down all three. Now, the Big Bang, evolutionists don't really like to talk about chemical evolution very much. That is what would have had to have happened if the Big Bang did actually happen. So let me just take you to the overview of the Big Bang. Now, in the theory, the current accepted theory of Big Bang is that there was only three gases in existence when the original Big Bang happened. So I'll just take you to the explanation of that. The first subatomic particles included protons, neutrons and electrons. Those simple atomic nuclei formed within the first 3 minutes of the Big Bang. Thousands of years passed before the electrically neutral atoms formed. The majority of atoms produced by the Big Bang were hydrogen, along with helium and traces of lithium. So the current model of the Big Bang is saying that within the first 3 minutes after the Big Bang, hydrogen, helium and lithium were present. But there's currently 102 elements on the periodic table. How they say that things occurred was through nuclear fusion. They say that supernovas occurring, stars dying. They don't know how the stars formed, but stars dying created the new elements that were required. There's a problem with that though, because you can't fuse past iron. So I'll just take you to, so anything lighter than iron, a supernova can occur, nuclear fusion can occur, and you can create things up to iron, but after iron you can't create new elements using nuclear fusion. You have to use nuclear fission. Right, I'll just show you that. Okay, so the fusion of two nuclear with lower masses than iron generally releases energy, while the fusion of nuclear heavier than iron absorbs energy. So you need energy to create the new elements, but when anything heavier than iron is involved, the elements actually absorb energy, so there's not enough energy to create a new element. Okay, so iron is a special element because of its nuclear binding energy. The very basic idea is that when you fuse two light elements together, you get a heavier element plus energy. You can do this up to iron. Now, nuclear fission is how they say elements heavier than iron can be created, but there's a problem because fission, as encountered in the modern world, is usually a deliberately produced man-made nuclear reaction induced by a neutron. It is less commonly encountered as a natural form of spontaneous radioactive decay. So basically the only reason that we know about nuclear fission now is because it's been happening in laboratories. It's something that's man-made, so there's a big problem there about how these 102 elements came originally only from 3 elements. That can't be proven, that can't be observed and explained. Now, I'll just take you to this final part. This is scientists now admitting in the modern era that they have no idea how planets formed. A few decades ago, astronomers were pretty confident that they knew how planets formed. Based on our own solar system, they thought small rocky planets formed near the host star and larger gaseous or icy planets formed further out. So when they started finding planets that didn't conform to these theories, they were confused. In the last 20 years, we have found worlds we never thought possible. For example, some planets have been found so close to their star that they orbit in just a few days, but density studies indicate that these planets are somehow made of ice, so they're orbiting their suns very, very close, only in a matter of days. I mean, there must be some kind of gravitational pulls and things going on there that cannot be explained by science, and also the planet is made of ice, even though it's directly next to a burning star. So they've basically admitting that they have no idea how planets formed and came into being, so that's a big problem for the Big Bang and resulting evolution. So just to finally hit on the point, the formation of stars, first stars, most likely population 3 stars, form and start the process of turning the light elements that were formed in the Big Bang, hydrogen, helium and lithium, into heavier elements. However, as yet there have been no observed population 3 stars, and understanding of them is currently based on computational models of their formation and evolution. So that's their full admittance that they have no idea how the planets and the stars actually formed. It's not observed, so that's not science, that's not observed knowledge. We can't accept that as knowledge. You can say it if you want, but it's not knowledge. Evolutionists like to talk about animals, that's fine, but they don't really like to talk about the formation of grasses and trees and plants. We need to account for deep time. They say that it takes deep time for these things to evolve naturally on their own, but we can actually mimic deep time by having continuous reproduction. If we have continuous reproduction, then that is basically the same as deep time. You're allowing for lots and lots of things to be born in a shorter amount of time. So we do have examples of that in the modern world. We have fish farming, and we've been fish farming since the 1970s. We farm carp, salmon, tilapia and catfish. And China is the biggest producer with 62% of the world's fish farming. In all this time, in these fish farms, carp have only produced carp, salmon have only produced salmon, catfish have only produced catfish. If evolution was true, we should see a propensity towards things changing, towards things evolving. If lots of things are being born, carp are giving birth to carp, salmon are giving birth to salmon, then there's no real proof there that there is a propensity towards evolution, new species being born. Okay, so 1970s, maybe that doesn't account for deep time, but let me take you then to, as I said, plants and trees, etc. So corn is probably the most produced form of agriculture. Humans first encountered corn in Mexico and Mesoamerica, and that was 2,500 years before Christ. So evolutionists believe in a common ancestor, and they say that given enough time, species can give birth to new species. Now they talk about animals, they will talk about that, but they don't really like to talk about grass and plants, the evolution of grass and plants and things like that. According to the current model of evolution, the first thing was moss. Now, how did moss become grass, and how did grass become corn, and how did grass become trees, and how did it become something as complex as an onion? These are very, very complex things that did not come from a common ancestor. So we've been producing corn since 2,500 years before Christ, and just in America alone, annually they produce 332 million metric tons of corn. So that is accounting for deep time. We're reproducing these things so often that it can account for deep time. And this is all that they've been able to produce from the original corn that man encountered in Mexico 2,500 years before Christ. We've got the process down to a fine art, and these are the types of corn that can be produced: flour corn, popcorn. There's about 8 or 9 different types of corn, and that is the limits. There is, even although there are variations within species, you can have different types of species within species, there's actually limits to the genetics. There is a certain point that they cannot go past. So that is the final proof that there is limits to genetics. Every single instance since 2,500 years before Christ, every single instance of man planting a corn seed in the ground, all that has ever come up is corn, different types of corn. So that's the final proof that you can have variations within a species, but at no point does it have the capability to turn into a new species. Every single instance, we're producing 332 million metric tons in America alone, and since man first encountered that first type of corn in Mesoamerica 2,500 years before Christ, we've got our process down to a fine art, the farming of corn, and all we've ever produced is other types of corn. There's no evidence that there's no observed evidence that this can become a new species. Okay, so that is the final proof that there are variations within species, but it stays within the species. We have no observed proof that one type of species can give birth to a new type of species. It's not knowledge. In associations with the flora and the fauna there, how complex it is to go from mosses, as I said, to different types of grasses and plants, because they are all flowering plants, and I'm about to now take you into pollination and how complex that is, and how things needed to be alive at the same time. But this is the final proof, when we look at corn, that there is a limit to the genetics, and it can't go past, it can't create a new species. It's always corn, no matter what. So join me in part 2, and we'll be looking into pollination and debunking from there, before I get into laughing at evolutionists. Thank you.